Welcome to All Access, and we have the pleasure to be joined by former Sports Illustrated sports writer and former ESPN contributor and author extraordinaire Rick Reilly. He's written his 15th book. It's called So Help Me Golf, and Rick has been happy enough to join us today to talk about it. Rick, how you doing?
Go Buffs. That's all I can say.
That's right. Go Buffs. It's been a rough 20 years, but they're going to get back into it. Hey,
20
Rick,
years, who's counting,
Yeah, 25, 30, whatever. Hey, Rick.
Hey, I was at CU when we lost to Drake twice, so
I think I was at those games.
Can't be as bad as that.
I know I was at the game when Oklahoma beat them 82-42, so.
I remember the lead because I was at the Boulder Camera then, and my lead was when Chuck Fairbanks said he was going to build a team for the 80s, we had no idea this is what he meant.
I don't think anybody did. Hey, Rick, how did you come up with the idea for this book? It seems like it's a bunch of stories and experiences and recollections from a lifetime playing and covering golf. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's a book I've been really writing for 40 years. It's called So Help Me Golf, Why We Love the Game. And I don't know if people, I grew up in Boulder, and my dad, not to get too personal, was a drunk. He was a drunk golfer, and he would come home drunk and mean and violent. And so I blamed golf. I thought, as a kid, golf is where dads went to go get drunk and then come back and cause hell in your house. But then my brother turned me on to the game when I was 13, and this is the greatest, most fun game ever. And it was all that chaos I lived with was not golf's fault. And I guess that's why I embraced it more than ever. And then I started covering golf. I've been covering majors since the 1982 PGA at Tulsa. So I've collected 40 years worth of true stories that make you love golf. I'll give you a quick one. There's a blind par 3 in Ireland, in Lahinch. You hit your shot over a mountain, and then you hope there's a green on the other side. And in one day in 97, 4 guys made holes in one on this blind par 3 inside of 2 hours.
Wow. And
so crazy in the bar, right? And the bartender's having the best night of his life, and everybody's buying each other drinks, and the caddies are in there, and all kinds of people are in there until the bartender's wife comes through the front door holding the 6-year-old kid. And it turned out he'd been putting balls in the hole. He was taking the shots, putting him in the hole, and then hiding behind a rock. So all these guys to this day still think they made holes in one there.
Sounds like that kid should have been part of Who's Your Caddy book that you came out with a few years ago. He would have been a pretty good caddy for some players.
Oh, yeah. That's the kind of caddy you want. So I used to have a caddy called Foot because he had the best foot. He could kick it out of anywhere.
That's right. So, Rick, this book is obviously, it's got some serious overtones. It's funny. There's some really good information in this book. I want to talk to you about 2 stories really quick. The first one is about the aspiring, struggling tour pro who turned to a life of crime to support his professional aspirations.
Yeah, I mean, this thing is a movie, and I think I will try to write it as a movie. In the late 1970s, a guy named Ricky Meisner was trying to make it on tour as a rabbit. You remember the Monday Rabbit qualifiers? And if you didn't make it, you had to go on to the next town, and none of your expenses were paid. And so Ricky Meisner ran out of money, but he didn't run out of hope for his golf game, so he started robbing banks. he would miss the cut, quickly dye his hair, put on a mustache, change the license plates on his car, go in and rob a bank. And he robbed 19 banks that year while he was on tour. And they called him the Gentleman Bandit because he would always show the teller, there's no bullets in this. Just give me the money, you'll be fine. But then at the 77 Tallahassee Open, he did qualify. And then after Thursday's round, he led. He was ahead of everybody, Nicholas and Watson and everybody. He's leading the tournament. And all these reporters interviewed a guy who secretly was robbing banks. And yet nobody at the FBI played golf, apparently, because it's Pensacola, Doral, all these golf towns. But they don't know anything about golf, so they don't know this has got to be a golfer. So eventually in Tallahassee, he shoots 78, 80, 82, misses the cut, and gets so mad he robs the next bank without any disguise, and he did 30 years. But if you look it up, that year he led the tour in money.
For good reason, right? The second story I want to talk to you about is about the prisoner of war. He was at the Hanoi Hilton during Vietnam, the same place the late Senator John McCain was at. And he used golf to stay sane and basically keep himself alive during those, I think it was 7 years.
Yeah, he's in a 6-foot by 7-foot cell at the Hanoi Hilton in North Vietnam, being shot down as a pilot. And for those 7 years, every day, he found a stick in the yard, and he hid it from his guards. And every day he'd get up and play golf. He'd kiss his wife, get in his Buick, drive through. He's from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Drive through town, wave at the used car guy, get to the club, say hi to the shoe shine guy, play with his 3 buddies. And so he'd hit his drive, right? And he was a pretty good player. He hit it about 250. He would pace off the 250 yards in the little cell. And he's like, well, now I got 132 yards, hits that shot. Now he walks the 132 to the green. He's got a 25-foot putt. Let's see, this breaks about 4 feet right to left, hits the putt. He'd always 2-putt. And he'd go on to the next hole. He'd kid with people. Mrs. Havermeyer, how you doing? You know, people and this kept him alive. And he said later, those rounds got me outside the prison. A bunch of people that he knew never got out of that prison because they went crazy. Because when you're in isolation for that long, you go nuts. Right. And he said that kept him alive. He left Hattiesburg at 175 pounds. He came back at about 100. He gets to the airport. He's about to address the crowd, thousands of people waiting for him. And he sees the shoe shine guy. And he sees the used car guy and the buddies he played with. He even sees Mrs. Havermeyer. And he just breaks down crying. And as he told his friend, really, golf kept me alive. And I guess that's kind of the point of the book. Golf for me is just woven through the fabric of my life. And I never remember what I shot. I just remember all the hilarious stories, the great things that happen, the way we take care of each other. And so the book is full of, I know some people think golf is a waste of time, but it's not. It's an actual life you can have. And that's what the book's about.
When you wrote for Sports Illustrated, you probably got the greatest assignment any sports journalist ever would get, and that was to travel the world and find the 18 most unforgettable golf holes in the entire world.
Right.
I'm wondering, after all these years, you played so many incredible holes, and some of the stories about the holes are amazing, but is there one hole that still stands out, or is that impossible to pick?
Well, just to let people know what happened, I was at Sports Illustrated and I said, hey, what if I went around the world one time and played the most unforgettable holes I could play? And this is how crazy the times were back then. They said, do it. So I went around the world, and note to Kyrie Irving, I flew east the whole way from Denver and ended up in Denver. So I don't know what happened, Kyrie, but it really is a round planet. But so many great, the hole in Bali where the monkeys come out and grab your ball and you can't finish the hole. The one in South Africa where you have to hit it over a crocodile pit. Of course, the 8th hole at Pebble, my favorite hole in the world, where it's this giant crevasse and the ocean's crashing. And one day the caddy looks down there and says, I don't remember that rock down below. It's 200 feet down to the bottom. And then they realized, no, it was a beached whale. And all the people had to go down. So, but there is one hole in Colorado on that list. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, Pole
Creek, one of my favorite courses up in Grand Lake, has the only U-turn 180-degree hole I've ever heard of. It's literally a 180-degree turn, but you can't cut the corner unless you can hit a drive 380 yards over Lodgepole Pines, which apparently some guys have been able to do. And I think it's the most fun hole. There's 2 lakes. It's just crazy. My buddy figured out, no, I'll just play the hole backwards. It's number 7. He played it up 6, and he'd always make birdie. And then they declared that out of bounds.
That's great. I think one of the great lines you had in this book was about the hole in Hawaii on the Big Island, the long par 3. It's like 270 or 80 yards, and you likened it to you likened it to Angelina Jolie, saying it's gorgeous, it's long, but a little too hard. His words, not mine.
It's gorgeous, it's long, but it's kind of mean. It's too hard. In fact, that's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And when they had the Shell's Wonderful World of Golf there, Gary Player refused to televise the round because he couldn't hit it 250 yards in the air. And I don't blame him. Guys go there and spend a week trying to hit it over that thing. But if you ever do, which I didn't, it's a great feeling.
All right, we're going to play some rapid fire here, Rick. I'm going to tell you like 3 things I learned from the book, and you just give it some quick context. So the first one of the things I learned was there's a PGA Tour pro who has putted with his eyes closed for the past 5 years.
That's true. Lucas Glover, who won the U.S. Open at Bethpage, got the yips so bad. In fact, if you Google horrible putt, one of Lucas Glover's putts comes up, and it was 18 inches, and he didn't even hit the hole. And I said, what happened? He said, I got the yips so bad that I was going to flunk out of golf. And then he talked to a psychiatrist who said, well, a yip is caused when you're afraid of what's going to happen at impact. If you close your eyes, you don't know when impact is. And so he said, for the last 5 years on tour, I've been closing my eyes on putts from 3 foot and in, and nobody's noticed. He says, because he wears a hat. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I've never noticed this. He goes, no. And I putt as good as anybody from 3 feet in, but I've never seen him go in. He just listens.
A golfer in Bismarck, North Dakota, played 536 rounds in a single year. How's that possible?
Right. So if you go to the USGA's handicap site, it's called GHIN, you can look up who played the most rounds last year. And it was this guy, Bob Gustafson, in Bismarck, where the summer's about as long as a Kardashian marriage. So how did he do it? Well, he gets up before the sun is up. He plays with the lights on his golf cart. Then his buddies play with him. Then he goes to work as a pharmacist. Then he comes back, plays another round with his buddies. Then his wife gets off work. They play. And then because the summer's nights are so long, sometimes they have dinner and they play the last round with does the sun setting. And he says, in that last round, we bring my dog. And I go, like an idiot, I go, what's your dog's name? And he goes, Tiger.
Thinking of that many rounds of golf just hurts my back already.
Oh, I know.
The final one is, and I don't know a single person who doesn't love Topgolf, but you claim to have come up with the idea of Topgolf, and you're still awaiting your royalties.
Well, what do you mean claim? I have proof of this. In my comic golf novel called Missing Links, one of the characters invents the actual Topgolf idea, and it had never been out there before, which is computer-coded balls. His idea was you hit them into these swimming pools out on the range, and they ding, 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 and then you can play your buddy and bet and drink beers, and it's a great idea. And in the book, he becomes this multimillionaire. 2 years after the book comes out, a friend of mine from Boulder High School emails me and says, dude, they're making your gizmo, your golf range thing, in England. They've already made 2. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, they took it right out of the book. And I know because I work for the company. So I'm like, I'm suing. But I lost the lawsuit because I didn't patent anything. And now the thing just sold for $2 billion to Callaway. And yet I don't hate it because it's so cool.
Right.
Is there one in Denver yet?
There's 2. There's one down south and one up north.
Aren't they so great? So then the guy, the president of the company hears this story and says, I'm not saying we stole it, but here's a lifetime membership to Topgolf. And I said, oh, well, okay, that's nice. That's a nice thing at least. And then I found out anyone can get one for $5.
If I'd have thought about that, I would have brought in my membership card and shown it to people because I have one of those too for $5.
You're not a nice person.
Hey, Rick, one of the things you write about in the book is your relationship with Phil Mickelson. And you admit that you're a Phil guy. It's kind of like Duke, North Carolina. Either you're a Phil guy or a Tiger guy. There's really no in between, right? And admittedly, I'm a Phil guy as well. But last year, he wins the PGA at the age of 50, and it seems like he's at the best place of his career. Like, it can't go any better. The cherry on top of the sundae. He is in a perfect spot. Now, a year later, based on some comments he made and his involvement into that Saudi Arabia Golf League, he's kind of in exile. We haven't heard from him in months, and it's really been a dramatic fall from grace. What are your thoughts on what's happened to Phil Mickelson?
Well, you're either a Tiger guy or a Phil guy. I'm a Phil guy because he tips. I've looked at his wallet probably 10 times. It's nothing but hundreds. I'm like, what's with all the hundreds? He says, well, I got a tip. And I said, well, Tiger doesn't, because Tiger doesn't tip people. And Tiger's not much fun once you get to know him. He just wants to play with his high school buddies. He's not really good with fans. He doesn't eat dessert, so he gets up after the main meal and leaves nothing for the check. And meanwhile, Phil, I've been in a car with Phil when it's raining. He stops the car and sees a bum on the side of the highway, gives him his golf umbrella and $500. I mean, Phil is really generous. Now, the problem with Phil is he always says stupid crap.
Just Phil being Phil, right?
It's Phil. And like one time he's like, it's more dangerous for you to wear sunblock than the sun itself. And I'm like, that's stupid, Phil. Don't say that out loud. Or remember when he was kind of fat for a while and he's like, no, this is subcutaneous fat. Like everybody's fat is subcutaneous. What are you talking about? But so then with this stupid Saudi thing, he goes, yeah, the Saudis are murderers, but what about the PGA Tour? And you're like, no, you can't compare those two things. Shut up. But he said it. He says he was off the record. The quotes sound like Phil talks when he's off the record, but he said it. And so now he's canceled for a while. I think he'll make his comeback. I'm surprised he hasn't made it yet. I think there might be a few more things coming out that are going to knock him sideways, but I think Phil will be back. And you notice he's not on the list to play in the Saudi opener, which makes me think he's going to stay with the PGA Tour, as horrible as it is,
right?
Which is where his legacy is. That would be insane to give up on American golf.
Are you surprised that a golfer like Dustin Johnson decided to dip his toe into this Saudi Arabian Golf League? Here's a guy who's made $75 million in his career, makes $20 million a year in endorsements, but now he's going to go to the Saudi Arabian League. It just seems to, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing for golf, or if it's exposing sort of an ugly side of the amount of greed some of these players have. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, the Saudis are starting this league with 8 tournaments. You can't be cut. There's only 48 guys. The prize money is ridiculous. They don't have to worry about profits. They don't care about profits. They have all the money you can. So I can see why guys would do it. Personally, I would never take money from a government that executes gay people, that murders American journalists. I wouldn't do it. And so, yes, I know Dustin got $125 million as part of his deal to switch over there. So I can see why somebody would be tempted. I think it's a mistake. I think this league's going to be like a tweener league between the PGA Tour and what was going to be a senior tour. But now the PGA is saying, you're out of everything if you go do this. The problem with Dustin is, and he's a great guy, he doesn't read. I once wrote this line: Dustin Johnson is so dense, light bends around him. And I said to his agent the next day, was he mad? And he says he didn't understand it. And so I'm not sure I mean this. I'm not sure he understands what Saudi Arabia is, where it is, and what it represents. This is not a democracy over there. This is a dictatorship in a sense, a family dictatorship, and they're a brutal regime. And I think if he knew more about them, he would not join this league.
We see that you're in your hotel room, which screams you're in the middle of a book tour. And
Isn't it glamorous?
Yep. You're a Boulder native. You're coming back home next week. I think next Tuesday on June 7th, you're going to do a book signing down in Littleton at the Tattered Cover. Tell us what people can do to go to it, and can they get their book signed, and what does a book signing look like?
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a Tattered Cover in Littleton, but it's called Aspen Grove, and it's my favorite bookstore. Well, Tattered Cover is my favorite bookstore, and so I think you just go online and you can get a ticket. But honestly, if you just show up, they'll sell you a ticket, and the ticket's just $5, which goes towards the book. And I'll sign it, I'll personalize it, whatever you want. I'll get up and do 30 what I hope is funny minutes about golf and about growing up in Colorado. And so I'd love to see it because I really want to get out. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina right now. This is a Motel 5. They don't even have Motel 6s here.
If I showed up to the book signing and I brought my Top Golf membership card, would you sign that?
Oh, I am going to punch you. I'm going to punch you right in the shoulder as hard as I can as soon as I see you. I knew your father. I can still punish you.
Hey, Rick, thanks for joining us today. I do want to say I appreciate you mentioning my home course in the book. I play at Willis Case. You called it a scruffy public course. It's my favorite course. It's my home course. I grew up by it. I appreciate you mentioning it. But hey, thanks for your time today. The book's great. I encourage everybody to pick up a copy. It's really a fun read. And thanks for your time today.
There's no better course next to a highway than Willis Case. Come on.
And next to a couple busy streets as well. Hey, Rick, thanks.
Yes.
Enjoy the book signing. Continued success. All right. Thank you. We'll be back in a moment. You're watching All Access.